All right, welcome to Revolution Network. This is Dr. Jason Dean. Today I am with someone who I actually met about a month ago. Now it was. I've listened to Ken for a long time on different radio stations, podcasts, etc. And I had a chance to meet him last month, finally in person, and he's an amazing guy, very smart. First of all, Ken, hello, good afternoon. How you doing?
Hey, Jason, good to be here.
Excellent. I'm going to give a little background on you so everyone kind of gets to know who you are. So, natural health educator and inventor, I'll just say from Florida, specializing in rejuvenation and cellular regeneration using raw and sprouted vegetarian food, herbs, food based natural supplements, detoxification, emotional healing, and reprogramming of limited unconscious beliefs, ancient esoteric techniques, and cutting edge science. And I got that from a friend of ours, Patrick, because he did it so well. I wanted to capture that one. Plus, you have a vast, basically engineering background as well, and you just know a whole lot of stuff about health. And this goes back to actually almost a little bit of a medical background. So, kind of fill us in just on that back summary for anybody who's never heard from you before.
Yeah, I was kind of immersed in the medical system my whole life because my mom was a nurse at Duke University Medical Center. And so I was around doctors and nurses in the hospital a lot. And then I worked there in my teens and early 20s. And then I worked at the North Carolina Hospital Association for, I think, 13 years or something. So I was in the medical system for about 23 years. I also worked in hospitals, worked in emergency rooms. I was a phlebotomist, did all kinds of different jobs in the medical system. So I was exposed to that at the patient level on up to the national policy level, working with patients all the way up to working with politicians and Congress people and that kind of stuff. And so I saw that system up close and personal, and I was born sick, basically, didn't know it, but I was very hypoglycemic as a kid, and I was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde my whole life. People knew not to mess with me if I was tired or hungry. And so eventually I I learned how to heal that. It was funny, when I was in the medical system, I went to our quote wellness program, which was going to the hospital. And whoever I saw basically told me that they had what I needed. So, it was drugs or surgery or psychiatry or whatever, meds and stuff. And I knew that wasn't the way. And so fortunately, I met someone who had worked with Dr. Gabriel Cousins from the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center in Arizona. And he has a many decade career healing so-called incurable diseases using living foods and detoxification and emotional healing and that kind of stuff. And so she taught me basically how to heal myself, and I did so, and radically changed my life, from eating. Basically, I was a computer geek, working in facilities, eating out of vending machines and, candy bars for breakfast and Cokes and that kind of stuff. And went from that to living foods lifestyle and detoxing several times a year and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I got into natural health. And then I got tired of working with technology and working in the medical system, and so I wound up quitting. And I worked as a potter. I actually became a potter and was self-employed for about 5 years, which brought me to Florida. And but by that time, my wife and I were living very differently than most people. We didn't have a television. I had learned about trauma-based mind control from people who were subjects of it and things like that. Also in the 90s, I worked with free energy technology and had seen very advanced technologies that a lot of people wouldn't even believe, stuff even beyond Star Trek. And so, worked with a lot of very advanced technologies, had a lot of very unusual experiences. And so when I got about 5 years into the pottery business, when I moved to Florida, people would come over to my house, new friends, and they would always ask, why don't you have a TV, and why is your refrigerator full of produce, and why don't you have a microwave, that kind of stuff. And I got tired of having 2 and 3 hour conversations explaining our lifestyle to people.
And so, I understand that. I understand that very well.
Yeah, it's bad enough being a vegetarian, but living foods is really, especially in a little town where we were at, it's like nobody got it. And so that that evolved. And when 9/11 happened, the pottery business just tanked. And by that time, I was teaching living foods classes because people were asking me to teach them what I was doing. And so the living food stuff just took off. And so I figured, well, if I'm going to do this, full time, then I better really study it. So I started studying at, living food centers like Hippocrates Health Institute and Living Foods Institute in Atlanta and Optimum Health Institute. And because of my background in engineering and also having had exposure to very advanced science, I was seeing things in these teachings that other people weren't seeing. And so I started formulating my own protocols and methodologies for healing, and wound up having a very high success rate, around 98% success rate with all so-called incurable diseases, whether it's cancer or diabetes or AIDS or autism or Morgellons disease, you name it. And in 2012, I stopped doing individual consultations because I just ran out of time. I was so busy teaching teachers and other people that I didn't have time for it anymore. So that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing. And because of my background in engineering and also working with advanced technologies, when I started probably 20 years ago, realizing the dangers of electromagnetic radiation, and also, later with Chernobyl and Fukushima nuclear fallout and all these various things, I started finding solutions or developing solutions for those, and wound up developing subtle energy technologies that can do everything from improving sleep and EMF protection to clearing air pollution out of the atmosphere for a 75-mile radius and balancing the weather and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I've had a really odd career, and when you work with these esoteric advanced technologies, you wind up bumping into other people in, secret programs, covert military programs, that kind of stuff. And they share information from time to time. And so I've seen a lot of things and been exposed to a lot of technologies in science and even mathematics that most people are not aware of, and mainstream typically doesn't even believe really exist. And so that's been part of the difficulty of, developing some of these solutions. They're so advanced a lot of times that people don't believe it. Or usually I encounter the problem many years before most people do, because they're just not aware of it. For example, genetically modified biowarfare agents. I've been teaching for 15 years how to deal with those because I've been exposed to them, and I've been targeted and attacked. I've had energy weapon attacks and biowarfare attacks, and my wife and I have had to go into hiding because I've developed technologies that could stop a lot of this negative stuff that's going on the planet. So because of all these things, I've developed some really different solutions for these problems. And now, thanks to COVID-19, people are starting to pay attention to some of this stuff. It used to be people thought it was just a conspiracy theory, even though there's plenty of scientific evidence for all this stuff that I talk about.
Yeah, and
that's how I got into doing what I'm doing.
And I want to dive into specifically today, but you brought it up. We're going to go into COVID-19 first because I know you have really, really great solutions for any viral components. And then after that, we're going to dive into 5G because you know so much about it. And one of the reasons I brought you on is because so many people are concerned about it. They know there's something to do with it, with the latest pandemic we're dealing with, et cetera. But let's first dive into, your background of what you know about the viral component, but also the solutions for that as well.
Okay, well, one of the things that came to me right away when I was looking at COVID-19, I always assume whenever you see any kind of a pandemic being advertised in the news media, I assume right away that it's a genetically modified biowarfare agent, because there are agendas when you're using biowarfare. Many years ago, I think even when I was in my teens, I recall reading newspaper article where a military general, an American military general, was quoted as saying that biowarfare in and of itself is not a useful weapon for killing people or basically killing your enemy, but it is a very effective terrorism tool for furthering agendas. And so that's what I've been seeing with these things. And years ago, because I've worked with some technology called quantum biofeedback. That technology can identify GMO microbes and things like that. And so, 15 years ago, because of my work with free energy and with other advanced scalar energy technologies, I was getting exposed to these things, probably sometimes accidentally, and sometimes I think it was, given to me. But anyway, I had to learn how to deal with it all. And so I was very aware of it. And now with COVID-19, my first thought when I heard about it was, okay, another bug of the year, you know, like Ebola and SARS and West Nile. Those were all biowarfare bugs, and they've been confirmed by laboratories, and people like Dr. Lynn Horowitz and others have exposed the labs that actually produce these things. So I'm not just like speaking from conspiracy theories. There are people that have confirmed this.
Right.
COVID-19 has been confirmed by multiple labs and researchers around the world to be a genetically modified microbe. There's, matter of fact, I posted a research paper by a bunch of researchers in India at 2 different universities that confirmed that it is a GMO microbe and it has HIV components in it. That, if people want to see that paper, they can go to downloads.freshandalive.com and they can download that paper and look at it.
We'll put that in the feed as well.
Okay. Yeah, because, you know, I don't want, a lot of times when when they're dealing with advanced topics and it's so far out of people's realities, they just think that you're a conspiracy nut or whatever.
Right.
This is not the case. This is definitely a GMO biowarfare bug. And it's, you know, even virologists in the know are saying the very same thing. For example, Dr. Francis Boyle, who was a lawyer, I believe he worked with the CDC, and has a lot of expertise in this. He's been exposing that and exposing some of the research on YouTube proving that it's a GMO biowarfare bug. So it is for sure a biowarfare bug. It's definitely genetically modified. But then what do we do about that, right?
And by the way, before you go into that, I think they honestly, and I don't know which way this is going. Obviously, I'm hoping there's going to be something positive and we take some things down, take some people down, etc. But it's interesting. I almost think like, because the social media is such a mess as it is, but it's almost like they actually messed up because you have all these people now actually, like you said, exposing things on YouTube and stuff like that. And it allows human consciousness to actually come up. So I think that's a good thing. I don't want to interrupt, but I kind of want to interject that in because I think they did mess up by allowing us to, we're waking up in a way.
For sure. I mean, this is all about the awakening of consciousness on Earth. And, you know, most people, myself included, are slow to change, and we usually have to have some kind of kick in the rear by something or somebody. So this is a big kick in the rear for the planet to wake up to the fact that we've got all of these different technologies, not just GMO biowarfare bugs, but scalar energy weapons, temporal weapons, believe it or not, all kinds of stuff that is way beyond what most people are aware of, and it's affecting them. It's not like this is just in covert programs that aren't being used. It's being used in mass on people and has been for decades. And so this is making people wake up to the fact that, you know, for one thing, biowarfare is being used. It's making people question that now, which is a good thing, because the only way we're going to stop this is if people understand that it exists, first of all, and then they demand that it not be used. You know, biowarfare, along with a lot of other nasty weaponry technology, should be banned on this planet. It shouldn't be allowed to be used, because you can see what happens when it gets out.
Agreed. And deep down the rabbit hole is, as far as I understand it in my research, is that a lot of the beings outside of this planet do not like us playing with nuclear warfare because it actually sets off different waves into the galaxy as well.
Right. You know, I don't usually talk about it, especially because it's having experiences outside of the norm. You know, a lot of times people think you're crazy. I've had experiences encountering extraterrestrials, and, you know, I know people in the secret space programs and things like that. And talking about it, people just think you're crazy and trying to get attention and that kind of stuff. And so I don't talk about it much anymore, but most definitely it's like, how far up the food chain does all of this stuff go? There is definitely an extraterrestrial component to all of this craziness that's going on the planet. And I've talked about it before in the past in interviews, but most definitely, you know, when you look at the explosion of technology in the last 100 years, it's not just because we got smarter. It's because, and I can tell you myself, I've developed technologies with the help of extraterrestrials. I've been given information by extraterrestrials that helped me develop solutions for this stuff. And I'm not alone. I have met tons of scientists and engineers and inventors who are also having that kind of contact. And also Nassim Haramein, who is a physicist who has figured out a lot of stuff, came out a couple of years ago and mentioned that he was having ET contact, and he was actually going out into space and having these meetings with extraterrestrials at these space stations and stuff. And they were giving him information to develop technologies and to figure out physics of the nature of things. So the truth is, there are lots and lots of people who are having ET contact in various forms and getting information to help humanity. But when you're talking about nuclear explosions, one of the things I was told by these ETs that I encountered was that a nuclear explosion is not like a regular explosion like dynamite or something like that. It's actually an interdimensional explosion. And this, what it does is it brings in scalar energy, which is superluminal light. Basically, it's light energy that travels millions of times faster than the conventional speed of light. And when those atomic particles are breaking apart and exploding, basically it's doing so through different dimensions of time and space. And that screws up some of these interdimensional ETs environments. And it's also like a beacon saying, we are here, we are here. And so since we've started detonating these atomic bombs back in the 40s, that has attracted the interest of extraterrestrials for various reasons. Number one, to make us stop doing it, because it ripples through time and space and damages things. And then also, maybe some nefarious extraterrestrials have taken notice and are doing business with some of our governments around the planet. And so I've had personal experience with that. But when you talk about it, people think you're crazy and they just shut off.
That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed with me. Don't worry about that. I have posted about this for so long, and it's not even like we're the first ones talking about it. You go look up William Cooper. You look up these different names out there on YouTube. They've been talking about this for 30, 40, 50 plus years. It's more the fact that people just have to wake up to, like, we're not the center of the universe. There's a lot more to this. There's a lot more to this. So I appreciate you talking about it a little bit and going into it and giving us at least some superficial information on it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's highly credentialed people too talking about it. William A. Tompkins, who's got tons of videos and he's got a book. He was one of the architects of the U.S. space program. He worked side by side with Wernher von Braun, and he's written books and has tons of interviews where he says that we've had all this contact with extraterrestrials, and they worked in the U.S. space program and all kinds of stuff. You've got Paul Hellyer, who was the Minister of Defense of Canada, who was in charge of all the branches of the military in Canada in the 60s and 70s, who has come out and said, not only have all these countries had extraterrestrial contact, not UFO activity, but extraterrestrial contact. He said that also the United States government had 2 extraterrestrials that he was aware of that worked in the Pentagon. So the reality is, people need to wake up to the fact that we have extraterrestrial influence on this planet going on. And that's part of the reason why you see the craziness going on, is because not all these ETs are benevolent. Most of them are, but a lot of them aren't.
I was actually just listening to Paul Hellyer this morning, and it's so funny because he's an elderly gentleman. I mean, he's probably in his 70s by now. But if you look him dead in the eyes, and even though I don't know him, you can see from where he's talking from. This is not conspiracy. This is just him telling the facts, and he was first contact with the whole thing. So it's one of those things. Again, we just have to wake up to it and understand that there's more to this world and more to this planet than what meets the eye.
Right, and also Dr. Stephen Greer, whose Serious Disclosure Project, you can find dozens of interviews he's done with high-level military people, colonel rank and above, talking about their interaction with extraterrestrials and unidentified flying objects. So, yeah, very much, if people just look, they'll see there's tons of evidence of this, and more coming out all the time. Gaia.com has their Cosmic Disclosure Program, where they have interviewed tons of people in the secret space programs, giving out all kinds of details on the technology. And I can tell you, based on my own personal experience, direct contact with extraterrestrials, that the stuff on Gaia, most of what I've seen there is for sure, it jives with my experience. So yeah, that's a component of all of this.
Definitely. Now that I've taken you off track, totally, it's okay. Give us some of those easy viral solutions that people can handle.
Okay. So number one, you've got to build your immune system. So how do you build the immune system? The way that you do that basically is by detoxifying the body and giving it dense nutrients. And so I've got tons of videos on my YouTube channel and on my blog at freshandaliveblog.com, where I talk about how to do that. And also I've done interviews with lots of other people explaining how to do that. But basically, at least 80% living foods, if you're doing a detox diet, 100% living foods, properly combined, so you're not mixing foods that digest slow like proteins and nuts and seeds and leafy greens. You don't want to mix them with foods that digest fast like fruits and sugars and starches. And generally you avoid starches and sugars and grains, pasta, uh, alcohol, anything that converts to sugar in the gut, that feeds pathogens. So especially if you want to protect yourself from COVID-19 or any other pathogenic infection, flu or whatever, it's to detox, clean your body out, and take probiotics to crowd out the pathogens in the body and promote good gut flora that will make you want to eat healthy foods. When you eat these starches and carbs and junk and toxic food and GMOs and that kind of stuff, that will actually modify the gut flora, and then you will promote bacteria in the gut that will make you crave those foods. They will actually chemically and energetically, they can signal to you, to your consciousness, and to the cells and the structures in your body to do things to feed them. And so that's where cravings for sugars and starches and alcohol and stuff like that come from. So the best way and easiest way to, quote, strengthen your immune system is by detoxification. I have herbal cleanses and different products we can talk about specifically for doing that. But basically cleansing and killing off the parasites and pathogens in the body that make you crave foods that feed them, you will wind up craving healthy foods like greens and sprouts and green juices and and not carbs and those kinds of things. So detoxification is the key.
Yeah.
For people that just want turnkey solutions, on my website and in my teachings, I talk about the solutions I have, and then also cellcorebiosciences.com. They have some really nice detox programs. So they have like a 10-month detox program, a 5-stage program for like $1,700, which is dirt cheap. You're familiar with them, I know.
Yep. We're killing parasites on a daily basis here, and Cellcore has become, obviously, since we were at the last seminar, and this is not to say I don't just promote supplement companies. That's not what I do. But I will tell you, they become my step one now to handling the system, getting the bowels moving, getting the kidneys moving as well, before I even give organ support, because the parasites, with the diet today, parasites have just become out of control.
Exactly. And that's it. People don't have an appreciation for the impact that parasites have in the body, because everybody's got them, and they rob you of nutrients, number one, but they also secrete chemistry that will alter the glands and the hormones, which regulate thousands of functions in the body. And so it can be everything from, brain fog to energy issues to baldness to all kinds of stuff can be related to parasite issues. So that, and also a lot of people, even that are aware of it, will do parasite cleanses, but they don't do it well enough to really get deep into tissue and get rid of the bugs that are deep inside. A lot of these bugs are very smart, and they'll hide in scar tissue in places where it's difficult to get at them. So you have to know what supplements and approaches to take. And there are also energy devices that you can use, which we can talk about, that will really help kill them off. So you're right. And Cellcore has also become a major part of my program as well. But along with their detox kits, I also use Dr. Robert Morse's herbal extracts. And so, for example, I will make a gallon of his Heal All tea, and I will put 6 to 8 of his herbal extracts. After I boil off the alcohol for about a half an hour in a double boiler, I'll put them into the tea and sweeten it with a little stevia. And I use stevia because any other sweetener will feed pathogens in the gut, but stevia doesn't. So you can use stevia as a sweetener. And I'll take that while I'm doing other supplements that generally detoxify the body, and then also in some specific cases kill parasites and pathogens. So for example, my number one go-to supplement that I always carry with me when I travel, and I keep it at home, and I keep it stocked always, is chlorine dioxide, also known as MMS or CDS, Miracle Mineral Solution, or chlorine dioxide solution. My source for that is kvlab.com, kilovictorlab.com. And right now, I think they've closed their website down because they've been overwhelmed with orders, but
Yeah.
they'll reopen in a few days. They close and open every few days after they get caught up on orders. But that guy he makes chlorine dioxide for municipal water systems, so he knows what he's doing, and he has laboratory conditions to do it in, and he's got a license to do it. And so that stuff, there's two forms. MMS is two separate liquids that you mix a few drops together, they react, and they create chlorine dioxide. And then I put that when I'm doing a parasite cleanse, or if I get sick with a flu or whatever, if I'm traveling, I'll take 6 to 8 drops mixed, reacted, of each of those, and I'll put that in 6 ounces of lemonade sweetened with stevia, and I'll drink that 3 to 5 times a day. And that just kills the heck out of whatever pathogen. So if I'm traveling, for example, I was in India a few months ago for 3 weeks, and India is super toxic and super polluted. And sure enough, I picked up some bugs, and I just took that, and then that started knocking it out before it even got started. And then another secret weapon that I have, along with some other supplements I'll tell you about, but along with that, my other major secret weapon that I use for killing any kind of pathogenic infection is quantum biofeedback. Quantum biofeedback are devices, specifically I use devices called the QXCI SCIO, that's QXCI SCIO.
Is this similar? Is this similar to the Rife world, the world of Rife machines?
Yeah, it actually encompasses the Rife frequencies. So this machine is very sophisticated, and basically what they are is a scalar energy machine that can create scalar waves and scalar fields, which is a form of subtle energy that can it's actually what all matter and electromagnetic energy is made of, and so it can create and alter matter. So within the body, if you use the right frequencies in the body, it can actually neutralize certain kinds of energy. It can alter matter within the body, and it can kill parasites and pathogens like nobody's business. So, and the cool thing is, because this scalar energy is what physicists call non-local, it doesn't travel through space and time like conventional electromagnetic radiation. Now, when you turn a flashlight on, that light that's coming out is getting weaker and as it goes away from the source, and it broadens. So the waves are like spiraling and branching and going away as they get away from the source. Those are called transverse waves. But scalar waves are kind of opposite of that. They're like a tornado in that at the source, they're like the big opening of a tornado, and they're spiraling, and they fold in on themselves. And at some distance away from the source is where the apex is. And so that energy, just like a tornado, folds in on itself, and it gets stronger as it goes away from the source. So it acts really weird. And but at any rate, it can alter matter within the body. And it also, if you use the correct frequencies, it can do everything from increase oxygen transport into cells to kill parasites and pathogens, to helping flush out heavy metals from the body, and a slew of other things. So Rife machines are basically early versions of this that, Royal Rife came out with maybe 100 years ago, 75 years ago. And this device puts out this energy field. When you sit in it, it can kill parasites and pathogens depending on the frequency that's being used. Well, quantum biofeedback takes that a step further, where you've got this machine that can create these frequencies, and then they have software that has a database of millions of different frequencies of different things. And so it basically can identify, when you look at matter, all of the elements on the periodic chart at the subatomic level, they vibrate. This is mainstream physics. So hydrogen, for example, has a certain frequency at the subatomic level. Oxygen has a different frequency at the subatomic level. When you combine 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, you get an overall resonant frequency at the subatomic level, and that can be measured, and you can therefore identify hydrogen, oxygen, or water. And so using that concept, you can identify elements or compounds or molecules or cells or toxins or pathogens or all kinds of stuff in the body. Now, it turns out also that human consciousness is a form of scalar energy. And so it can actually detect and measure human consciousness and emotions and tell what's going on emotionally with a person, which is quite interesting. And it can also affect the emotions. So these devices, the SCIO, the the Eductor, the Indigo, and also the Life System, and there are other ones from Russia and Germany. They can read the body, see what's there, and then send frequencies back into the body to help counteract whatever's going on. And sometimes amazingly so. For example, I was exposed to nuclear fallout 3 times. I ingested it in my food. And I could have very easily died, but fortunately, I was doing 2 things that saved me. One was I was testing a new supplement called Cosiva Advanced TRS, which is a nanozeolite. We can talk about that in a moment. But that fortunately pulled the hot particles out of my gut very quickly. And then I used quantum biofeedback with the SCIO, and it actually has the capability of neutralizing radioactivity in the body. And so the first time I got exposed to radiation, I neutralized it in about 10 days. Second time, it took about 5 days. The third time, it took 3 days. And so now I've got protocols for that. So anyway, this technology is very amazing. It can kill, it's basically like a giant parasite zapper. And it can really knock back parasites and pathogens in the body. So I use it in conjunction with herbal detoxing and other, MMS, chlorine dioxide, nanozeolites with the Cosiva Advanced TRS, and then a few other things like monoatomic silver. We have a monoatomic silver product on our website called Accelerated Silver. It's been scalar energized, so it will put out these frequencies when you ingest it. It'll actually put frequencies out in the body that will enhance its capabilities. And ionic silver is known for its antiviral and antibacterial properties. So I will use that. If I pick up any kind of a bug, I'll guzzle that stuff.
Nice.
And then also iodine. Iodine in the right form can be extremely antiseptic and is very effective at killing parasites, pathogens, viruses, bacteria, etc., even genetically modified ones. And so monoatomic iodine commonly is sold under the name of nascent iodine, and that's a very good form of iodine. We take it a step further, and we have a nascent iodine product that has been scalar energized with the anti-frequencies of all known radioactive elements. So when you ingest it, it actually has the capability of reducing radioactivity in the body, and it's been proven in Fukushima to do that.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
So there's a lot of solutions, but those are really the main ones. And then probiotics, taking probiotics to help crowd out the pathogens in the gut, because these bacteria in the body are actually pleomorphic, meaning
right.
that they can actually mutate from one form to another, and radically so, unbelievably so. Like you can have bacteria that can actually morph into viruses, or viruses that can morph into
right.
bacteria.
I've mentioned Antoine Béchamp in previous episodes, and people are like, "Oh, what is that?" Go pleomorphism.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's like a dog turning into a cat.
Right.
It just doesn't. It defies all logic, but yet it happens. It's been scientifically proven. So, what happens when you are creating an environment in your body by eating a lot of cooked food, which is very acidifying to the body, and it reduces the oxygen levels in the body, particularly in the blood and the extracellular fluids. That creates an environment that's conducive to pathogens, because pathogens have certain things in common. One is that they tend to be anaerobic. Another thing is they have a positive charge on them. And they also have common protein structures. So you can target any one of those structures and kill them. And so some supplements will flood the body with oxygen, or food or wheatgrass juice, things like that. They flood the body with oxygen. Certain oxygen therapies like hyperbaric chambers, et cetera, will do that. And then there are certain supplements that will target the protein structure and dissolve the protein structure, and then they fall apart and die. And then other supplements that will neutralize their charge or use their charge against them. For example, zeolites, which are a mineral that have a cage-like structure. They're little microscopic, they're like little geodesic balls that have a very strong negative charge inside. And because pathogens and free radicals have a positive charge, these zeolite particles will grab onto these pathogens because they have a positive charge, lock them inside their cage, neutralize the charge, and then they get flushed out of the body. So I use all of these methods to get rid of these bugs in the body, and it works extremely well, even with these GMO biowarfare bugs.
Amazing. You're educating a ton of people. And it's so funny because the other day I heard the president say basically like the cure cannot be worse than the cause. And there was some hidden code in what he said because funny, right after that, I went to a Great Awakening map. And on the Great Awakening map was things like Rife and scalar energy and all this different stuff that really needs to be globally brought up at some point because it's been so suppressed for such a long time. And now going into that, I know one of the biggest topics that my viewers talk about and ask about, and I have some education on it, but I'm learning more and more, but I know you have a vast education on this, is 5G and what this is going to cause. And so if you could go into a little bit about what 5G really is, so people who don't understand its ramifications, you can do that, that'd be great.
Okay. There's a lot of confusion around 5G technology. There's also a lot of rumors going around that the COVID-19 virus is actually not a real virus and it's 5G technology and blah, blah, blah. And that's not the case because there are labs that have proven that COVID-19 is a real bug and it's genetically modified. But that doesn't mean that some of these energy technologies may be used in conjunction with a pandemic like this. I don't know if that's happening or not. I don't have any inside information on it, but I am familiar with 5G technology and wireless in general because I developed technology about 15 years ago for protecting people against electromagnetic radiation, including cellular radiation and microwave radiation, et cetera, et cetera.
We have your
5G,
we have your pyramid at home and we love it.
yeah, for people that are interested, the Rest Shield device on our website and the Home Shield device, those are what I'm talking about. And they're scalar devices. They put out a scalar field, and when electromagnetic radiation, which is normally bouncing around us from all kinds of different sources, it's being reflected off of surfaces, and it hits our bodies and it passes through our bodies, and these waves interfere with cellular communication in the body. And if it gets strong enough, it can create serious disease or even death. Mainstream science typically says that, oh, well, non-ionizing radiation is not damaging to the body, that it's absolutely false. There are thousands of studies proving that even low-level EMF is damaging to the body. And I'm getting ready to publish a blog article with about 50 different scholarly articles on that very subject. But so it's been very well proven that these technologies are harmful, including 5G frequencies. The Department of Defense studied 5G frequencies for use in weaponry and other purposes, communications and stuff, because they were interested in the effects on soldiers, and they determined that it was too dangerous to use around soldiers. So, it's very well known about this technology. But what's not being said about 5G is, what are the real reasons it's being implemented? Because I worked with advanced technologies and I bump into, for example, NSA scientists and CIA and military scientists and people working with these technologies in the know, I hear a lot of information that most people aren't privy to about this stuff. And 5G, and even publicly, there are people like Barry Trower and Mark Steele who've come out, who are energy weapons experts, who have talked about what 5G really is and that it's an energy weapon, et cetera, et cetera. And there's normally multiple uses for these technologies. So, publicly 5G is being promoted by the cell companies as, faster internet speeds and that kind of stuff, and better clarity on your cell phone, those kinds of things. And that's all understandable. But the way it's being implemented, because previous technologies, as we all know, you've got cell towers scattered all around, these large towers that broadcast for miles around. They broadcast these signals, and cell phones that are within that field, they're transmitting and talking to the towers, and they're communicating. But it's based on these broadband fields and signals. Whereas 5G technology, because the frequency is so high, they have to use very high frequencies in order to convey a lot more data over a data stream. And so it's kind of like, you can think of it like waves at the beach. If you're standing in the water at the beach and you've got big waves coming in, they're slow, but they have a lot of power behind them, and they'll hit you hard and they can knock you down. But they don't hit that frequently. They're less frequent because they're bigger and slower. And then you can have little small waves that just lap up against your ankles that are very fast. They don't have a lot of power behind them, but they're very fast. And so that concept with communications, a high frequency signal can carry a lot more data in a given amount of time than a larger wavelength. And so they're using frequencies that are higher frequency than microwave radiation. And so with those higher frequencies, those are known as millimeter wave frequencies.
Right.
They can carry a lot more data, but they're very weak. And so you have to have transmission towers much, much closer than you do with 4G and previous generation technologies. And by the way, 5G stands for fifth generation wireless technology.
Right.
So anyway, instead of having towers miles apart, they've got to put towers every 500, 600 yards. And so basically, at every driveway and all over the place, you're going to have globally this huge network of millions and millions of these towers broadcasting, which is going to blank the earth in massive EMF.
Right.
Now, if that's not bad enough, and the reason that they're doing that is because these millimeter wave signals from these, not just cell phones, it's smart devices, smart appliances, all kinds of technologies will be utilizing this, including military technologies. Those devices send a very narrow beam, like 15-degree radius or less, and it's very directed. They call it beam forming. And so because they're sending a directed signal like that to these mini towers, and the signal is weak, they have to reflect it sometimes, particularly in cities and places like that. They'll have to reflect it off of buildings and surfaces and objects to get it to your device. And so so you've got a lot of this beam forming going on, shooting these beams all over the place and reflecting it all over the place. And then also you've got satellite-based technologies to send signals down as a part of the network, and also doing beam forming. And so you're going to have this massive EMF across the planet between the ground-based mini towers, small cells as they call them, and these satellite-based towers. Now, we're not talking about a handful of satellites being put up in the atmosphere. We're talking about 62,000 of these little mini satellites. SpaceX right now I live about an hour away from SpaceX, and I see the launches. Every other week, they're sending up 60 satellites in a rocket. But the plan is they've applied, and Boeing and some other companies have applied for a total of about 62,000 satellites so far to implement this 5G wireless network. And it also has military components in it. This is something that they're not talking about. Scalar components. I discovered serendipitously that cell phone towers, at least some of them, probably all of them or most of them, certainly within the US, have military scalar energy technologies on them. And I can't disclose how I know that, but I discovered it firsthand that these towers have got scalar technology on them. So there are different technologies being used for different purposes on these towers. And not all of the purposes are for faster internet speeds and running your smart appliances. Now, I highly recommend for people not to buy into the 5G propaganda, and don't use these smart appliances. I mean, even right now, we've got smart appliances like smart toilets that can they're Wi-Fi enabled, connected to the internet, and they can report data on God knows why you would want it. You're taking a crap, your friends can look on the internet.
Right.
Or smart toasters that can notify your cell phone when your toast is ready. Or they literally have a Wi-Fi enabled smart toothbrush now, electric toothbrush, that can make a 3D map of your mouth and send your dental records to your dentist or the NSA, presumably, or whoever else. So if you buy into the convenience of this, these smart appliances, smart speakers, refrigerators, all this kind of stuff, you're basically implementing a massive surveillance system within your own buildings. And I know this because, like I said, I was shown by an NSA scientist who was working for them against his will the scalar technology that's built into cell phones and some of these smart appliances, and how it's being used. And so these technologies are not just about faster internet speeds and convenience. It's about surveillance.
Right. Now, could you possibly, with the satellites and antennas going up now, because they're already installing it pretty much everywhere, it's in Orlando here as well, could you either run a more healing signal through those and accomplish the same thing, or could you add devices to them in some way, shape, or form using whatever element, whatever metal it is, to protect the actual people. Could that be done?
Yes, it is being done. For example, I'm doing it. I mean, my
Good.
devices, create scalar fields that will protect against that. And the way they work, they don't block the signal, because if you block the signal, these devices don't work. And if for sure, I can tell you, if you block cell phone towers, the cell companies will show up at your doorstep.
Right. They will.
They will.
Yep.
But at any rate, scalar technology, scalar field technology, if it's built right, can structure the electromagnetic radiation so that when all these waves are coming in at you, basically the scalar field will do what's called quantum coherence and make the waves all become parallel to each other. So when they pass through you, they're less damaging and they're not as noisy. They don't interfere with cellular communication as much. So my devices, we've been selling those for 12 years or so. They do that. And then there are other little, devices like shungite pendants, EMF pendants, the little EMF devices you put on cell phones. Those create scalar fields, the good ones do, that will structure the EMF, make it less damaging. So we've got that. And then you can use conventional shielding in some cases, particularly for people who are EMF sensitive. Sometimes you have to put yourself inside of what's called a Faraday cage, which is basically a metal enclosure of some kind.
Right.
So I know people who are EMF sensitive. You can go to lessemf.com and buy conventional shielding of various kinds for phones, for Wi-Fi, for beds. You can actually put a metal screen mesh tent around your bed or around a room. There's all kinds of different shielding technologies that you can use as well. So I tell people to use a combination of things. Number one is avoidance. Avoid using these technologies. Don't use Wi-Fi, use wired connections. Some people are going to be surrounded by Wi-Fi anyway because of their neighbors, and that's where the scalar technology comes in to protect you against that. And that's very effective. And then, minimize your cell phone use. Don't use your cell phone as a handheld computer. I'm not a Luddite. I'm a technologist. I love technology. I have a cell phone. I use it when I travel. I have got tons of apps on it that I use, but I have an EMF protection on it, and we've got something called a harmonic shield. So I've got that on my phone. I minimize my use. At most I ever use is maybe 90 minutes a month on my cell phone. I only use it for things that I need when I'm traveling in the moment. I don't use it for email or anything like that. I do use it for communications if I'm traveling. But that's minimal. And I also use an air tube headset if I'm going to be speaking on it. I never put it up to my head. I never put it next to my body when it's on. I put it in airplane mode constantly if I'm moving about with it. I found out too, when I'm traveling, I was traveling overseas and I needed it for using walking GPS. I'm walking around holding it for hours a day, doing walking GPS. I got very sick, felt like I was going to have a heart attack. So I realized and I discovered that if you just use a selfie stick and keep it maybe a foot away from you, that's sufficient to minimize that kind of damage. So if you're just smart about it, you can still use these devices and use the conveniences on them, but don't use these things as a personal computer, and minimize their use, put protection, use them smartly, which I've got tons of information about how to do that on my blog. And you'll be fine. You can still use these things.
And you made a good point there too, because you're obviously sensitive to it, but the cleaner I think you are, the more your body actually resonates the way it's supposed to be, health wise, etc. You actually can feel this stuff far more, versus if you're really sick, chronic issues, etc., you don't feel this radiation as much. So a lot of times you'll hear people will go, they have the pods in their ear, whatever it may be, and they're like, oh, no problems at all. Well, you're actually not a healthy person. Versus if you take somebody who's actually really healthy, their body's clean, operating the way it's supposed to, they can actually feel certain things. I mean, my wife can feel a MacBook, a foot away. She can feel a cell phone. So that's also a really important thing to point out, I think, too, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. People that are very toxic and are deficient in nutrients, they are so used to suppressing symptoms and suppressing pain and suppressing emotions and suppressing feelings that a lot of times they won't notice these things. Whereas when you get really cleaned out, you get rid of the parasite and pathogen load and your immune system's strong, number one, you're much more robust and have much more strength against all of these assaults on your health. But you do feel them. You're much more sensitive to them.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Well, I know you have a busy day ahead. I do as well. I'm going to actually have you probably come back. So I'll be emailing you and saying, hey, come back, because I love your information. There's so much more that people can gain from you. And I know a lot of my viewers, this is the first time seeing and hearing from you. So I really appreciate the information, Ken. It was excellent.
Okie doke. Well, anytime, Jason, be happy to.
Absolutely. We'll dive more into 5G as that stuff comes around, because no matter what happens coming out of this quote unquote crisis, we're definitely going to be having things over the next year that we're going to have to deal with health wise and get people healthier. And I think honestly, people are going to be using this time in the next probably month or two. I think people are going to wake up to the fact that they're not as healthy as they should have been. I mean, people are home right now. They're realizing they can't play with their kids. They're tired, etc. And I think this is a big boom for not only just consciousness in general, but people getting healthy. So I appreciate the information. Ken, where can everyone find you online?
My main website is freshandalive.com. My blog, where most of my educational material is freshandaliveblog.com. And my YouTube channel is Fresh and Alive. And on my YouTube channel, I have a 2.5-hour video on how to protect yourself against 5G, which I did last May. So that goes into great detail on how to protect yourself against that.
Beautiful. Thank you again for your time, sir. Everyone, I appreciate you watching Revolution Network with Dr. Jason Dean. For Ken Rohla, we sign off. Be healthy, stay well, and keep your eyes up out there, because there's always something going on. We got to protect ourselves and go into full consciousness and really truly understand our potential out there. Have a great day. Stay well. Take care.